meeting. All right, thank you all. All right, Jai Baba, friends. Today we are going to celebrate Saint Francis. This is October 1st. His actual feast, Catholic feast day, is October 4th. He passed away 796 years ago on October 3rd. And so we'll have a bit of uh, sharing at first, I guess you'd say. If you brought, you can introduce your animals if you like. Although I think we know our animals come to Archie every day. but, so and they seem to
Or
really
at least you can hear them in the
right.
background.
And you'll probably hear my dog today. Yeah. um, so anyway, folks are invited to share what they're, and Eva was just contributing a fact. So let's let Eva do that. And oh, excuse me. And then I'll have another couple of video, a long video and a short video about the Wolf of Gubbio, um, and a few things to share before the video starts. All right, Eva, what were you saying?
I found online under Sherry Art Books. In 1932, Meher Baba traveled to the home of one of his favorite saints, Saint Francis, for the purpose of an unprecedented celestial meeting. The book shares excerpts from Baba's time in Assisi, the story of the life of Saint Francis. So I guess it's an ad for the book, but it sounds really interesting.
Oh, yes. I don't know if anybody's researched. Baba had a meeting of a meeting in that cave. Uh, wow, that would have been interesting to include. Maybe David talks about it. How that was a he spent boy I don't all night in that cave, I believe, and yeah, celestial meeting sounds like the right term for it. Um, Okay. I have a few quotes by St. Francis. Um, he said here, well, I love this. While you are proclaiming peace with your lips, be careful to have it even more fully in your heart. And he said, if it is no use walking anywhere to preach unless our walking is our preaching. And then about animals, if you have men who will exclude any of God's creatures from the shelter of compassion and pity, you will have men who will deal likewise with their fellow men. So, okay, now, um, uh, well, uh, the animal, the PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, uh, teamed up with this lovely priest called Father John Dear, Dear, who has a recorded blessing. You can call this number. I'll put it in the chat. It's 1-800 Assisi. Yeah, 1-833 Assisi. So I will put that number in the chat. I called them, uh, and I'll read what his blessing. He says, so this priest, so he's a lovely man. This priest. So if you would like a blessing for your animals, you can call this number. Where are we here? Um, yeah. 1-833-277-4741, and get his recorded blessing for the animals, and which is for all animals. Blessed are you, Lord God, maker of all living creatures. On the fifth and sixth days of creation, you called forth fish in the sea, birds in the air, and animals on the land. You inspired St. Francis to call all animals his brothers and sisters. We ask you to bless this animal by the power of your love Enable him or her to live according to your plan. May we always praise you for all your beauty and creation. Blessed are you, Lord our God, in all your creatures. Amen. And then for a sick animal, he has, Heavenly Father, you created all things for your glory and made us stewards of this creature. If it is your will, restore him or her to health and strength. Blessed are you, Lord God, and holy is your name forever and ever. And I'll just show you a pic. And this is now Father John Deere. I just love that, Dear, who is who record. He has this blessing recorded, which okay. So I'll just show you quickly a Father Deere who lives in Monterey. He's with he's part of the Diocese of Monterey. Let me find him. Okay, just got to show you quickly his happy face. Whoops, are we here? Yeah. There's Father John Deere. Oh, cute. And Peter may well send out this announcement about this year on the 4th, which is when Saint Francis is, that's the feast day for Saint Francis. All right, now before the video of David Raffles' presentation of Assisi is about 2.5 hours long, including some questions and answers. Basically, it's a video of last year's program. So, and before that, I'm going to show you a short video of the story of Saint Francis taming the wolf of Gubbio. And it's legendary. I don't know. It's pretty well known. This wolf terrorized a village, and Francis. Let's see.
St. Francis of Assisi was born into a wealthy family in this picturesque Umbrian town. As a youth, he lived a raucous, party-filled life before acting on his romantic dream of becoming a knight. Knighthood, however, did not suit the future saint. After a series of visions, he renounced all worldly possessions, famously rebuilt the local chapel one stone at a time, and worked selflessly for lepers and others in need. Endorsed by Pope Innocent III, he established the Franciscan order dedicated to the commitment of renunciation and a dedication to those in need. He was the first person in recorded history to receive the Stigmata, or 5 wounds of Christ, considered by many to be the manifestation of the purest level of Christian faith. Francis is perhaps most popularly known for his love of animals and all creation. In the swan song of his life, he sang his Canticle of the Creatures, in which he reveres all aspects of creation as brothers and sisters, and urges love and forgiveness as the path to true peace and joy. My personal favorite story of the patron saint of animals and environment is that of the taming of the wolf. In this painting, I have employed a time-honored compositional technique known as contre-jour. Contre-jour in French literally means against the day. It is a compositional technique in which the subject matter is dramatically backlit, delivering a mysteriousness to the scene. I have also used the trees to create shafts of light in a more literal representation of the spiritual aspect. While Francis was staying in the town of Gubbio, he learned of a ravenous wolf that was terrorizing the people. After some pets and livestock were killed by the wolf, some villagers resolved to go kill the wolf, only to become the wolf's next victims. Residents became afraid to leave the city walls. Then Francis and a companion went out to meet the town's nemesis against the advice of the villagers. While in the forest, suddenly the wolf, jaws agape, charged them. Francis calmly stood his ground, speaking compassionately to the wolf. "Brother Wolf," said Francis, "I want to make peace between you and the people of Gubbio." St. Francis learned from the wolf that it had been abandoned by its pack. In its desperation for food, it had ventured into danger but really meant no harm. Then Francis spoke again to the wolf, offering reconciliation. "They will harm you no more, and you must no longer harm them. All past crimes are to be forgiven." The wolf agreed. St. Francis returned to Gubbio with the wolf. A stunned crowd watched Francis ask the wolf to make a pledge to do no more harm. In response, the wolf extended its front paw and placed it on the saint's hand. Then St. Francis asked the townspeople to feed the wolf. Transformed by what they saw, they loudly and convincingly agreed. From that day forward, the peace was kept. The wolf lived for 2 years among the townspeople, livestock, and pets, receiving handouts. The wolf hurt no one, and no one hurt it. When the wolf finally died of old age, the people of Gubbio reverently grieved their loss.
Illumina il cuore mio, dammi fede retta speranza, certa carità.
There. Sorry. Okay, there we go. And now I'm going to hit record. Oh, I'm famous for not doing this. Oh, we are recording. Sorry, I thought I hadn't done it. Okay. So with that, we'll now see last year's presentation by David Raffo, which, boy, I could see every year. It was a really good one. So let's see. I will call that up here. Yeah. And you will see me again because I introduced that one too. So where are we here?
Betty, can you put the link to both the videos in the chat?
Yeah, I will. Yeah.
That last video made me cry
Sweet. Wasn't that
about the
beautiful?
wolf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All righty, here we go. There. He was a member of the team who wrote the 2017 book Fortunate to Love Him, a biography of Baba's close Mandali member Khorshid Irani. David lived in Assisi during the summer of 2019 as part of a global spiritual pilgrimage to key sites of several spiritual traditions. So, without further ado, here's David, and we're going to Assisi.
Yes, going to Assisi today, and a big Jai Baba Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai to everybody. So as Betty said, I'm going to give a presentation about, well, a pictorial presentation about Assisi and about some of the sacred places there, including the St. Francis's cave where Baba held that special meeting with the spiritual hierarchy. I guess one of the things I would like to say about going to Assisi is that it is, for those who are interested in St. Francis, I think going to Mehrabad and Merazad for Meher Baba is very analogous to going to Assisi for St. Francis. And you'll see it's the city is incredibly well preserved, and the feeling, what's more important is that the feeling there is well preserved. So I'm going to do a PowerPoint presentation. I hope you guys are okay with that because that'll let me show more pictures. And I'll just talk to the slides. And of course, if you have a question, I'm happy to take questions in the middle. We can also take them. I'll also have some time at the end to take questions. So without any further ado, let me bring the presentation up. Is everybody able to see it? There we go. Can people see it? So just to start out, as Betty mentioned, today is the 795th anniversary of St. Francis's passing. He died on October 3rd, 1226. We're almost at the 800-year mark, which is quite incredible. This is a picture of, this first slide is a picture of the statue that one is greeted with when one enters the sanctuary of Eremo de Carceri, or the Hermitage, which is what we call it, which is where St. Francis's cave is that Baba stayed in. And what has always struck me about this statue is you'll notice that the Catholics who constructed this statue, look at all of the symbols that they put around St. Francis's halo. If there ever was a link to Baba for me with St. Francis, this is it, that the Catholics themselves put this on
Real.
statue.
Looking for him.
And you notice the birds here, which is what is going to be happening after the talk, is a blessing of the animals. So let's get started. So this talk is about Assisi. I want to give you an introduction to Assisi to orient you to the places that we're going to see, because the places and the places that we're going to see are so tied to St. Francis's life that giving you an introduction to where Assisi, how Assisi is today, and then because for the spiritual seeker, of course, because the city is so well preserved, you go back in time. It's that amazing. This is a picture of that's in St. Francis's Basilica. This is John the Baptist, Mary, and Jesus, of course, and then St. Francis on the side. I'm sure folks are familiar with the Lord, make me an instrument of your peace prayer. This was not written by St. Francis, but it was attributed to him because a lot of the concepts that are presented here are so characteristic of St. Francis. Rather than to start with this, which I love this prayer, I'm going to start with the Canticle of the Creatures. Most high, all-powerful, good Lord, yours are the praises, the glory, and the honor, and all blessings. To you alone, Most High, do they belong, and no human is worthy to mention your name. Praise to you, my Lord, with all your creatures, especially Sir Brother Sun, who is the day and through whom you give us light. And he is beautiful and radiant with great splendor, and bears a likeness of you, Most High One. Praise to you, my Lord, through Sister Moon and the stars, and in heaven you formed them clear and precious and beautiful. Praise be you, my Lord, through Brother Wind, and through the air, cloudy and serene, and every kind of weather, through whom you give sustenance to your creatures. Praise be to you, my Lord, through Sister Water, who is very useful and humble and precious and chaste. Praise be you, my Lord, through Brother Fire, through whom you light the night, and he is beautiful and playful and robust and strong. Praise be you, my Lord, through our sister Mother Earth, who sustains and governs us, and who produces various fruit with colored flowers and herbs. Praise be you, my Lord, through those who give pardon for your love and bear infirmity and tribulation. Blessed are those who endure in peace, for by you, Most High, shall they be crowned. Praise be you, my Lord, through our sister bodily death, from whom no one living can escape. Woe to those who die in mortal sin. Blessed are those whom death will find in your most holy will, for the second death shall do them no harm. Praise and blessings, my Lord, and give him thanks, and serve him with great humility. This is so characteristic of St. Francis's prayers and exaltations and how he related to the Lord. So yes, this talk is going to be an introduction first to Assisi, and it will be, and then I will tell you about St. Francis and his life, and we'll talk about Meher Baba in Assisi and go to the special places. And I'm going to just provide commentary on different things. So this is a picture of St. Francis's Basilica. It is on one end of town, which you'll see. This is probably one of the most beautiful sunsets I saw in my life, and the picture does not do it justice. So this is the view of Assisi from the train station. If you look up at Assisi, it's on a hill. As you can see, St. Francis's Basilica is on one end of town on the west end, and then as you go through the town, you see it on the hill, various elevations, and there are probably a dozen little churches, big and small, in Assisi, in this small 2 kilometer by 1 kilometer town. And as I said, touring Assisi to honor St. Francis is like visiting Mehrabad and Marazat to honor Meher Baba. It is a beautiful, well-preserved, walled medieval city in Umbria, Italy. It's a 2-hour drive from the Rome airport, 2.5 hours by regional train. It's an easy commute. It is a place of pilgrimage and tourism for Catholics and Christians and other spiritual seekers from all over the world. It is a global pilgrimage site. And for those who feel it, it has a profound feeling. And it is a special must-see, in my opinion, a must-see place for Baba lovers visiting Italy. So this is Assisi today, and yet it is grounded in yesterday. What you see on the left is a picture of Piazza del Camune, which is the central square of Assisi. And this is what it looks like today. You can see the medieval buildings, even a Roman. This is the Minerva Temple. It was actually originally a Roman temple. It was converted into a Catholic church, but it is original Roman. And underneath all of Assisi, it was actually a Roman town centuries, millennia ago. We are looking toward the east from the west entrance of Piazza del Camune. And on the right, we're looking at Piazza del Camune from the other side. We're from the west looking east. So you're seeing both sides of it. And it is a place of gathering, of cafes, of liveliness. Even in COVID, people are out and about in the center of the city. And the sun-drenched streets are medieval. You can see people walking around. There are religious people, the priests and brothers and nuns, as well as groups of pilgrims walking the streets and going to the different spiritual sites. And you can see the beauty just when you're in Assisi that overlooks the valley, which includes Santa Maria dell'Anjali and the town of Santa Maria, and the place where Francis lived and worked, when he was outside of Assisi. One of the things that is amazing about Assisi is that every May they have something called Calendomaggio, which is a medieval festival, and it is a throwback to keeping the traditions, and basically the north part of the upper part of the town competes with the lower part of the town, and everybody gets involved. And when I say everybody, I mean everybody. They get involved. The kids get involved with the drumming. People dress up for 4 days, and they put on plays. And this is Piazza del Camune, and basically they put on these open air plays in the center of central square. They set up bleachers. You can see this person taking a picture here from the bleachers, and her name's Annie, by the way, and it's pretty amazing. And you can see again, here's the stage and people on stilts, costumes, singing. They write scripts. Every year it's different, and it's truly amazing. And it is quite loud, in fact. And I don't know if I can get this to play. Let's see. Just amazing. And they do this every year, and it's incredible.
David, what do the plays depict?
The plays depict different themes, and so this, like I said, is 4 days. So you'll have a play in the evening and in the afternoon, and there'll be different types of things. There'll be musicals, or there'll be dramatic. There was one where they were talking about St. Francis going to the Middle East. There are different themes. It just varies, and every year it's something new. It is not everybody must be an amateur to be involved, but quite honestly, these are incredibly professionally done, even though they are amateur. The music's incredible, and it's held in the middle of May. It's a place of gathering, and this is me with
And Russ.
That's right. Hey, Rosalie. That's right. It's with Ann Ross, and we are right by the Basilica where that commemorates where St. Francis, the house that St. Francis was born in. I'll show you that. And then it's a place of gathering with friends. You probably recognize a number of these Baba lovers. Jennifer Tinsman's back there, Emily Myers, and more. So let's start talking about St. Francis's life. So St. Francis was born in late 1181 or 1182. That people do not know when his birth was. Some attribute it to Christmas Day. No one knows for sure. He was one of several children born to Pietro di Berardone, who was a prosperous silk merchant, and his wife was French, Pica de Berlaymont. Francis was the favorite and indulged by his parents, and he lived a high-spirited life, typical of a wealthy young man. He was handsome and witty and gallant and delighted in fine clothes. He spent money lavishly. And around 1202, when he was about 20, he joined a military expedition to fight against the town of Perugia, which is about 14 miles away. And during that fight, he was taken prisoner at Collestrada, which is he didn't make it all the way to Perugia. And he spent a year in prison as a captive. Upon his return to Assisi in 1203, apparently it didn't faze him too much. He just returned to his carefree life. But in 1204, there was a prolonged illness that caused him to reevaluate his life. And in 1205, Francis left for Apulia, which is in the south of Italy, and he wanted to join the army of Walter III, the Count of Brienne, to go on a crusade. However, he had a strange vision in Spoleto, which was about 28 miles away from Assisi, which made him return. And at that point, he had lost his taste for worldly life completely. What you can see here on the right is the oldest known portrait in existence of St. Francis, dating back to his retreat at the Abbey of San Scholastica Subasio in around 1223 or 1224. So it's a little bit after this time. But notice how this portrait does not have the stigmata. and it's the oldest known portrait of him. So just as some places to mark part of the story that we're saying here of St. Francis's birthplace. And so this is called the Oratorio of San Francesco, the Piccolino. It's the little oratorio, and this is a very special place. It's not very popular, by the way. It's a little unmarked thing. It's a little room. This used to be a stable, a cattle stable, and as the story goes, St. Francis, when St. Francis's mother was giving birth to St. Francis, they tried. Her delivery was stalled. It wasn't happening, and so so they shifted her from the house, which is about as a short walk away. They shifted her to this stable, and it was there that she was able to give birth, in this cattle stable. And as the story goes, Francis so loved Jesus that he wanted to be born in a stable. It's got a special feeling. It's very sweet. And this arch was built afterwards, but the place inside, a little altar and a beautiful feeling here. It's just down the street from the church. And what church is that? Is this church. This church was built on top of the home that St. Francis's childhood home. So there's a few things that are preserved from that home, like a door and stuff like that. But for the most part, the house was destroyed and they put this church here. What is preserved, though, is this under the stairway. It was a storage room, but this is the place where St. Francis's father locked him away when he was punishing St. Francis. And so this is a little statue of St. Francis. We'll hear more of that about this in a minute. So here's a map of Assisi. This is the tourist map, if you will. What I want to highlight for you here is the central square. This is what I showed you pictures of, where the Calan di Maggio is held. And what I'm going to do is bring us back to this time and again, so that we're oriented to the different places that we're going to be seeing. And right now we're talking about the birth of St. Francis's childhood home. That is right here. And the Oratorio, it's right over here, just really close. It's this little dot there. So this is what we've just seen in pictures. And again, I'll keep bringing us back to this. In 1205 really marked the beginning of St. Francis's conversion. He renounced his friends and his happy-go-lucky lifestyle and engaged in a life of intense prayer. His friends noticed the change and were joking with him, "What happened? You must be thinking about getting married, huh?" And because he was looking so down, and St. Francis said, "Yes, to a fairer bride than any of you have ever seen," and he was referring to his Lady Poverty. Around this time, St. Francis met and kissed the hand of a leper, and he had a mystical vision of Jesus Christ in the forsaken country chapel of San Damiano, just outside of Assisi, in which the icon of the crucified Christ said to him, "Francis, go and repair my house, which, as you can see, is falling into ruins." And this is a picture of that very cross, that icon of Christ crucified. This is the original cross that spoke to Francis, and it is hanging in the Basilica of St. Clare. To get money for the repairs, Francis took his father's fabrics and sold them, and when his father found out, he dragged Francis home, beat him, bound him, and locked him in the small storeroom, which you just saw. In 1206, Francis's father sought to force his son to forego his inheritance, and in the midst of legal proceedings before the Bishop of Assisi, Francis renounced his father and his lineage, and by some accounts, Francis stripped himself of his naked as a token of his renunciation, and the bishop tried to cover him, but he walked out of town. And if you've ever seen the movie Brother, Sun, Sister, Moon, this is beautifully portrayed. This is Bishop Guido's house. This is where that whole scene took place. This is the gate to Bishop Guido's house. And on the left, we see Santa Maria Maggiore, which is another famous church in Assisi. But this is where that all happened. And we can imagine Francis just walking out of Assisi as a result. So back just to orient us again, that's the central square. This is Bishop Guido's house in Santa Maria Maggiore, just to the south, down the hill. Over the next 2 years, Francis embraced the life of a penitent, during which he restored several ruined chapels in the countryside around Assisi, including the Porzunkula, which we'll see later, the little chapel of St. Mary of the Angels, Santa Maria degli Angeli, which is in the plain below the town. This later became Francis's favorite abode. By degrees, he wasn't able to do it all in one shot, in one go. By degrees, he took to nursing the lepers in the Lazar houses near Assisi. And this is a statue of St. Francis serving the lepers, washing them, cleaning them. And this is a little river by which he did that. And his example drew others to him. By 1209, Francis had 11 followers. The brothers lived a simple life in the deserted stable house, the Lazar houses, which are stable houses. They're stables, essentially, of Rivator near Assisi, but they spent much of their time wandering through the mountain districts of Umbria, making a deep impression upon all those who heard their earnest preachings. This is the Basilica of Rivator. And as you go inside, what you find is that Rivator is actually a superstructure for this stable house. This is the house that Francis lived in with his companions, and they served the lepers. And so you have the open place where where the animals stayed, and the 2 rooms where the people could stay. It's built by, it's a humble little house. And you can see just places where they slept, and that's a statue commemorating St. Francis. And this is where they held their services. And again, the Basilica of Rivator is a superstructure for this special place. And where is Rivator? Here's Piazza del Camune. Basically, you go down the hill into the valley, and then you go about 3 miles to the east of Assisi, and that's where Rivator is. So it's a good distance outside the city. About a 25-minute to a half-hour walk, but you can get a bus to go there. In 1209, when Francis was about 28, he composed a simple rule for his followers, the friars, and then he led his first 11 followers to Rome to seek permission from the Pope, from Pope Innocent III, to found a new religious order. And the Pope accepted his rule, which gave him the blessings to have his order of the friars. By the way, Pope Innocent III was not so innocent, because he actually ordered a number of crusades, and one of them was to wipe out the Cathars in southern France. Hearing Francis preaching in the church of San Rafino in 1211, a young noblewoman, Claire of Assisi, became deeply touched by his message and realized her calling. On the night of Palm Sunday, and this is a picture of St. Clare here. This is in the Basilica of St. Francis. On the night of Palm Sunday, the 28th of March, 1212, Clare clandestinely left her family's palace. Francis received her at the Porzunkula and thereby established the Order of the Poor Ladies. There was an order for women. This was an order for women, and Francis gave Clare a religious habit, and that she was about 18 at the time. So this is San Rafino, the Basilica of San Rafino. And this, right next to the Basilica, is Clare's childhood home. So you see, when she came to see Francis, she just walked right over here to the church and entered. And by the way, the baptistry, the place where they give baptisms, this little church, this little fountain or bowl. This is the original one. Both St. Francis and St. Clare were baptized in this baptistry. When I say to you Assisi is authentic, this is what I'm talking about. The original things are still there. And by the way, San Rafino is actually built on top of Roman ruins. There was a Roman temple here, and you can actually see there's places in the floor of San Rafino where you can look and see the Roman ruins beneath. Where is San Rafino? Well, it's just up the hill from Piazza del Camune. Did a little walk. St. Francis founded the Order of the Friars Minor for men and the Order of St. Clare for women. And also he established the Order of the Custody of the Holy Land. So if you go to Jerusalem, what you'll find is that the sacred places, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and other sacred places, those are cared for by Franciscans. They are the only ones who are allowed to do this. And it was because of St. Francis's visiting the Sultan as part of his work. And so the Franciscans were given latitude to go into the places and to curate the holy sites for Christianity. For those who could not leave their homes, Francis later formed the Third Order of Brothers and Sisters of Penance, a fraternity composed of either laity or clergy whose members neither withdrew from the world nor took religious vows. Instead, they observed the principles of Franciscan life in their daily lives. While Francis was praying on the mountain of Laverna during a 40-day fast in preparation for Michaelmas, and so this is a feast day in the Catholic Church, it is the Feast of the Archangels, and it was just a few days ago, September 29th, where it commemorates St. Michael, St. Gabriel, and St. Raphael, the Archangels. Francis had a vision as he was preparing for this on or about the 14th of September in 1224, the feast of the exaltation of the cross, as a result of which he received the Stigmata. And this is the place commemorating where St. Francis received the Stigmata. It is in the chapel of the Stigmata, which is in Laverna. And I thought I'd share this with you because it's really quite beautiful. It's talking about when St. Francis received the Stigmata. Because a seraph appeared before him. As it stood above him, Francis saw that it was a man, yet a seraph with 6 wings. His arms were extended, and his feet were conjoined, and his body was fixed to a cross. 2 wings were raised above his head, 2 were extended as in flight, and 2 covered the whole body. The face was beautiful, beyond all earthly beauty, and it smiled gently upon Francis. Conflicting emotions brought great joy. The sight of the suffering and crucified figure stirred him to the deepest sorrow. Pondering what this vision might mean, Francis finally understood that by God's providence, he, Francis, would be made like the crucified Christ, not by bodily martyrdom, but by conformity in mind and heart. Then, as the vision disappeared, it left not only a great ardor of love in the inner man, but no less marvelously marked him outwardly with the stigmata of the crucified Christ. That's from one of the biographies of St. Francis. And you know, St. Francis loved nature. You can see the setting. This is Laverna, the complex. You can stay in these buildings. It's open to people to book pilgrimage time there. It's about 60 euros a day. This is where the chapel of the Stigmata is. And so St. Francis was looking over this cliff as he was praying. Laverna from Assisi, it's not in Assisi, it's not even close, but it's about an 1.5-hour drive from Assisi by car. And you can rent cars in Perugia. More of the beauty of the place. This is just a panorama of the hills you see at Laverna. And this is the complex. more caves around the chapel where you can go and pray. And in this cave, Francis had a vision of Jesus, which is marked by an iron grate, where Jesus appeared before him when he was praying. And there's the chapel of the Stigmata from below, because there's forest below. Again, where he received the Stigmata, the habit that St. Francis wore. Here's the chapel of the Stigmata. Francis is one of the most venerated religious figures in Christianity. He died on the 3rd of October, 1226. Pope Gregory, who supported Francis, canonized him on July 16th of 1228, just 2 years after his death, along with Saint Catherine of Siena. Francis was designated the patron saint of Italy, and his body was placed in the lower basilica. So they started building the Basilica of St. Francis before 1230. Any questions about St. Francis's life? We're going to move on to what Mayor Baba did in Assisi.
So they don't really know, they're not even sure what year he's born in.
They don't know the exact date. They're saying it's either 1181 or 1182. So it's right in there. Was it late 1181 or early 1182?
Yeah, it's so funny because I saw this thing, I don't know, in an almanac, and it said that he had died the night before his 40th birthday. Obviously, the person just made it up, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think that that's true, right? Because he died in 1226, so that would have had to have been 1186. So they're saying 1181 or 1182. So St. Francis was older than 40. Donna, Ken, you had a question?
Yeah. Have you heard anything about that actually was a different cross? I unfortunately, I can't remember the details, but someone said the real cross is hidden away somewhere and it's a different one than the tourist one, but I don't know the background on that. So
yeah, I spoke with Nick also, who his sense was that the real cross was elsewhere, and no one would leave the real cross in St. Clare's Basilica because it's so open and someone could take it. You know, I inspected the cross that's hanging in San Damiano and the cross that's hanging in St. Clare's Basilica, and from my eyes, the one in St. Clare's is old and authentic, and the one in San Damiano now is a replica.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Yeah, you bet. Any others? I can't see everybody's hand. I got lucky with Ken's, but if anybody else has a question.
David, I have a question. It's Marta. Do you have any information? I was raised in the Catholic Church, so I just accepted Stigmata. Do you have any information about the Stigmata, if you really feel it was a real thing? And if it was, did it continue to bleed? And do you have is there any history or anything written about what the Stigmata was or what happens to it through the years after the saints got Stigmata?
What I can tell you is that St. Francis had wounds that continued to bleed. He had wounds in his hands and in his feet and in his side. And there's stories about changing the bandages, and that it was difficult. And some of the bandages are on display.
Oh, okay.
In some of the places. And he had to wear boots in the winter, and it was hard because of the wounds, addressing the wounds.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You bet.
I'd also read that he was actually the first person to receive Stigmata. You know, it wasn't a tradition or anything at that point or anything that.
Right.
Oh,
The first person they know of.
yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, all this stuff. But I remember growing up Catholic, there was a Padre Pio that had the stigmata. There were different people had it.
He's more recent. He's more recent.
Yeah, well, whatever. But and also some Newman had it too. A woman had it. But anyway, it sort of reminds me of like how many years Baba banged his head. And 7 years he was pounding his head, you know, to bring himself down. And how did he cover that up all that time? I just don't know.
Right. He wore those head coverings, right?
Yeah, but
And
you don't see him in many of those head coverings, and they don't seem to cover where it was hit. You know, it's so interesting. But you definitely, that Julian Lamar, that painter that Baba sat for, you definitely see that the mark on his forehead is so beautiful. Yeah.
yeah. Well, and Rosalie, thank you. That's a good segue to talking about Meher Baba and Assisi. So on Saturday, August 6th of 1932, Meher Baba went to Assisi for a couple days. And this is a picture of Baba in 1932, but it's from Hollywood. It's not from Italy. But this is on pages 1456 and 1458 in Lord Meher. And so they arrived in Assisi at 5 p.m. and were met by Herbert, who had found an actual cave used by St. Francis outside of the town on Mount Sebastião. This is at the Ermo de Cartry. There were other caves in the hill, but there's about 15 of them, by the way. But Herbert had covered this particular cave with branches to recognize it again and prevent others from invading it. He had been instructed to meditate in it prior to Baba's arrival for 4 hours daily and 8 hours on the day preceding Baba's arrival. After a light meal at 6:30 p.m., they left for the cave, covering quite a distance by car and ascending the remainder on foot with some difficulty. Leading the way, Herbert guided them to the spot at 7:30. The sun was setting, the birds were headed toward their nests, and Baba was immediately to enter the cave. But before doing so, he instructed his companions not to look at him, and above all, not to touch him. Baba carried a prayer rosary of St. Francis inside with him. It was settled that Chanji and Herbert would keep night watch outside the cave, and Kaka and Quentin would relieve them in the morning. Baba had ordered Kaka and Quentin to return to town and go to the Catholic Mass in the crypt of the Basilica of St. Francis at 7 a.m. and to kiss the tomb of St. Francis before coming back to the cave by 9 a.m. Signor Pavesi was to watch their belongings, and others were ordered not to eat. The fast was to be broken when Baba emerged from the cave. At midnight, Chanji and Herbert made tea for Baba and placed it near the cave's entrance. The next morning, Sunday, August 7th, Kaka and Quentin went to the cave to stand watch at 10. Chanji and Herbert went back to the hotel to rest. Near noon, that was in town. Near noon, Quentin heard a sound and, forgetting Baba's warning, looked toward the cave. Inside, he saw Baba facing the sun with his eyes closed and making strange sounds. A wonderful vibration filled the air. Remembering Baba's order, Quentin quickly looked away. At noon, everything was still. Then at 1 o'clock, Baba clapped and Kaka and Quentin removed the branches from in front of the cave. Baba directed Kaka to go to Assisi and inform Chanji and Herbert to come at 4:30. Coming out of the cave, Baba ordered Quentin not to come near him or touch him. So with Quentin trailing behind, Baba roamed out about the hillside, and it's very hilly there, for a half an hour before re-entering the cave. The summer day was quite hot and the air was still. Kaka, Chanji, and Herbert came at 4:30 p.m. An hour later, according to instructions, Quentin called out to Baba, and Baba stepped out. He seemed dazed, as though he were unaware of his body. After a few moments, Baba stepped forward stepped toward them and gestured. How lucky you are that you are the first to speak to me after this seclusion. Baba then called them into the cave and explained, spiritually, a big meeting of spiritual personages took place here, the likes of which has never before been held. It is due to the greatest upheaval that is coming for the world. It will be the greatest upheaval of all times. It was decided in this meeting that I will manifest as my original real self and speak next February. Vast changes everywhere will follow. My circle, which is already formed, will realize me. Their duties will commence in different directions, and the changes all over will cause an upheaval in the world which has never before been experienced, as the greatest spiritual revolution of all times takes place. A member of my circle, Gustagi, will drop his body on becoming realized. Now, for those of you who know that Gustagi passed in 1958, not in 1932. However, these words are pretty potent, especially for our time.
David, did anybody say that rosary that Baba used, and was that a rosary that actually St. Francis used?
Great questions. There is a special type of, so I don't know about the rosary being preserved, but there is a special type of rosary that is attributed to St. Francis. It has the Tau. So St. Francis didn't really focus on the cross so much. His kind of symbol for it was the Tau, because it's Jesus with his arms like this, and so it's T, and that's at the end of that. And I think it has fewer beads than the usual rosaries.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just to orient us again, here's Piazza del Camune, and then this is Eremo de Carceri. It's about 3 miles. It's a beautiful walk. It is hilly, and it's out in the forest, and it's a very secluded place. As I mentioned, upon entering Eremo de Carceri, you see this statue. And this is the building. You can see the trees. This is the entrance down here. This is just a view of, this is not the ocean. These are clouds. This is a layer of clouds. So you're up a bit, and in this area, in this lovely building, it's just a very lovely place with a courtyard. Oh, sorry about that. I wanted to, yeah, with a well, and then inside you have a place where St. Francis prayed. You have beautiful paintings, and you can see how Christ's arms are uplifted. So this is the Tau symbol for St. Francis. Hanging here is the Cross of San Bernardines. Quite, to me, it had a special feeling. You can't really get in to see it all the time, so I took a picture when I could. It has a special feeling for me, anyway.
What is the significance of this place,
This
David?
is the entrance. This is where St. Francis and his companions got outside of town to go and pray and seclude themselves. And this is also the property, the area where St. Francis's cave is that Baba did his seclusion work that we just read about. And so this is the entrance to Eremo. The statue of St. Francis is right about here. And so you walk this path. Here's the building that I just showed you pictures of. And as you walk through the building, and it's small, tiny, narrow hallways and low ceilings and stuff, you walk through, you come out, and then there's a path out here. You can see a river running through this area. And then here is the trail that you take to get to the cave that Baba stayed in. And you can see that there are other caves along the way. This is the cave number 15. It's number 15 on the map. And it is, and so from this main trail, this is the yellow, this thing right here corresponds to the yellow here. And then right here, as you go down, this is the trail down. and it gets more narrow. Right here, this is Andrea di Spoleto. That is the title of cave number 15, but it is actually Baba's cave for us. And as you walk the path, you'll see different little caves where Bernardo, Saint Bernardo, and the other, or Bernardo de Quintavalle, and the other companions had their secluded little huts. And then as you keep going, you get to St. Francis's cave and Baba's cave. This is a picture of Baba's cave where St. Francis also prayed. And as you go inside, you can see how humble it is. And you can see that Baba lovers often put pictures of Baba and Francis. And I mean, others put pictures of Francis too, but Baba lovers put pictures of Baba, sorry, here. It's a beautiful feeling inside. For the Italian Sahavas, we took, there were about 20, I would say, folks, maybe more, who came predominantly from the Myrtle Beach area, and they walked to the cave. Again, the trails are up and down hills. It's not easy, and of course, as you go through that Eremo de Carceri building, you know, the hallways are narrow, the ceilings are low, and not all of us were. Some people were big. It was hard to get through those, and so there was a real struggle. You know, you hear stories about people walking all those steps up to making a pilgrimage to bow down at a temple at the top of the hill. This was kind of like that, where it was a lot of work, a lot of physical work to get to this cave, Baba's cave, but everybody wanted to do it. And boy, I'll tell you, when the folks bowed down, and I was the last in line. I was kind of the caboose on the train, so to speak. But when those folks bowed down, man, what a beautiful, beautiful feeling. And so you can see
David
Yeah.
were you on that pilgrimage when Esfandiar Vasali went?
I was not.
No, okay.
I met Svandir in the US and in India, but no, I was not.
Yeah, because I know Jane probably was. So I thought maybe this picture was from there. Yeah.
No, this is from 2018.
Yeah.
Yeah. So seated on the ground outside the cave, they had a meal of bread, butter, cheese salad, sardines, and fruit. Similar to a dooney, a pit was dug and a fire was lit. Later, the ashes were collected. The leaves, twigs, stones that were lying in the cave were also gathered and taken back with them. Baba was exhausted from his spiritual work and declared, "In the cave, I was in a meeting with all the Sadgurus and saints. So it is now difficult for me to come down to this gross plane after being in that highest plane of consciousness for so long." Leaning on Herbert and Quentin's shoulders, Baba slowly, and remember, this is in 1932. Baba was not even 40, and he's leaning on, and this was before the accidents, and he's leaning on their shoulders, right? Baba slowly descended the hill, walking as though he were intoxicated. At times on the way down, they would have to support Baba on both sides, which was sufficient proof as to how the burden of his spiritual work had physically affected him. Herbert and Quentin's support, though, gave Baba no relief, and he informed them, "It is necessary that my feet touch the ground and that I walk, because only then will I be able to come down from the highest to the lowest plane." Coming out of his transcendent state, Baba seemed dazed as he walked down the hill, and again, it's 3 miles back to town. And by the time they reached Assisi, Baba appeared more normal. Herbert took Baba around the town, showing him the vain places, and you're going to see those associated with St. Francis. Baba went past the home of Bernardo de Quintavalle, Francis's first disciple. Baba pointed to a rock outside the house and disclosed, "This was the spot where St. Francis sat and meditated on me as Christ, weeping throughout the whole night with the love for Jesus Christ." Near the Basilica of St. Francis, they refreshed themselves in the Windsor Savoy Hotel around 9:30 p.m., where Baba had a bath. They left Assisi an hour later after coffee. Since Herbert was returning with them, they were now 6 people in the small Fiat, including all the bulky luggage, but they managed to accommodate themselves. So again, this is a 3-mile walk that Baba made back here through a very beautiful forested road, and then entered the town, probably went past San Rafino, down into Piazza Del Camune. Again, remember Francis's birthplace is right here. And then right here is where Bernardo de Quintavalle's house is. And right here is where the Windsor Savoy is. I actually lived right about here, actually on this road, when I was staying in Assisi. So here is the porch of Bernardo de Quintavalle's house. How do we know it's Bernardo de Quintavalle's house? Because the name of the Quintavalle family is right here. So we know this. And then here's the picture of the Windsor Savoy Hotel. We don't know what room Baba stayed in or anything, but it's really fun to go in there. It's a beautiful hotel.
David, who is the man that you mentioned that lived in that house? Who was he?
Which
Bernardo, Bernardo, whatever.
Bernardo de Quintavalle. He was Francis's first disciple. And,
oh, thank you.
And if you ever seen the movie Brother, Sun, Sister, Moon, Bernardo is well featured in that.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm a fan. And here's some folks that you might recognize on the porch of Bernardo's house. It's sweet. I used to walk past this practically every day when I was living in Assisi. There's the picture of the town. And if you recall from the movie, it had those beautiful valleys of poppies. Guess what? It's real. That's the Basilica of St. Francis right there. So any questions about Baba's time there? So I'm going to move to the final part of the presentation, which is showing you some of the beautiful places that around Assisi. This right here is a picture of the cross that is the replica that's hanging in San Damiano. I mean, one of the things that struck me about the differences, Ken, was that if you look at this replica, this is all flat. And if you go to the cross in St. Clare's Basilica, the halo is raised, and actually right below the feet is also raised on that cross. So this strikes me as a real, as a replica, whereas the other has just more detail, and it looks older if you look at it in person.
David, I wanted to ask you, in the movie Brother, Sun, Sister, Moon, I didn't know if it was historical, but when you went to get permission to form the order, did the Pope bow down to him? Is that historical? Or did they know? I mean, they do things in movies, so you never know.
That's right, and that movie made some real, if you recall the history of St. Francis, it kind of looks like he went to war, and then when he came back from war, he was ill, and that's not what happened. And you actually thought he was going on a crusade, and actually, historically, he went on the crusade after he was ill. He tried to get on the crusade after he was ill. That time when he went off to war was against Perugia, before his illness.
Right.
A couple of years in between. Also, they didn't show him in prison for a year.
And any idea, I mean, is there any record, what was his ailment? I'm just curious. What?
I don't know. I haven't done the research. And also to your question, I don't know if that's true that the Pope bowed down.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, see, from my perspective, when I watched that movie, and I've probably watched it more than a dozen times, when I watched that movie, it almost makes you think that the Pope is kissing where Francis received the stigmata, right? But at the time he visited the Pope, he did not, and got the order formed. That was before he received the stigmata. So it's hard to, I would be surprised if he actually did that.
You wonder sometimes, like they say he's the first to get the stigmata. How could anyone know that? I mean, it's nothing that something's going to publicize, you know? I mean, I remember when Esfandiar talked about Myrtle Beach, he said there's many lovers of God that aren't Baba lovers in Myrtle Beach. And so, you know, it's very interesting what gets publicity. You know, I mean, I was raised Catholic very much, and but you do get the essence that there was real saints, of Saint Francis being one, you know.
Well, yeah.
And it's like Eric had this T-shirt, and it says, "I survived Catholic school." I always loved that, you know.
Anka Io. Yeah, me too. I went to Catholic schools for years.
I wanted to add one thing. I asked Bao Kauchuri one time, I says, I don't want to repeat the Catholic Church thing, thinking it's the only way, because they really did. And I could see why they felt that, you know, but, you know, and Bao, in his typical manner, didn't answer the question, but I loved his answer. I love what he said. He says, as the manifestation goes on, you won't have to ask, is he or isn't he? You'll be swept along with the joy. That was the best answer I ever got from Bao. I loved it, yeah.
So let's go to the places. Rosalie once again provides the segue. So first, let's start with San Damiano, and remember, this was the first church that St. Francis was rebuilding, and it's right down here. You go out the Porto Novo, and which is on the east side of town, and then you go straight down the hill, and there's San Damiano. So this is the pathway down to San Damiano, downhill, and here it is. Now, what strikes me is the part that St. Francis rebuilt was probably pretty small at the time. But this is the place where St. Clare spent 40 years of her life while Francis was alive and afterwards, because St. Clare died in 1253. St. Francis died in 1226. She spent 27 years after Francis passed. And remember, the Basilica of St. Francis was being built starting in as early as 1230. So the church wasn't putting money into Assisi and these special places. So the fact that this was built up, this is probably, this is original from St. Clare's time. The original San Damiano church, it's hard to see. What we do have is right in here. This is the original part that was built. And again, here's the cross, the replica of the cross hanging that was, that spoke to St. Francis. And there are pews here. I'm sitting like in the first row of the pew taking this picture. And there are various rooms with various chapels in San Damiano where the nuns prayed. And this is a room above where Clare died. So she was in a bed, and it was in this corner here. So
David, do they say Mass in any of these churches anymore?
Yes, they do regularly. Yeah. I mean, it's in Italian, but yes, you can go, and actually there are English masses in various churches around town, certainly in the Basilica of St. Francis, Sundays at 9:30 in the morning, and then in various churches around town. But here is where St. Clare passed. This is the courtyard in San Damiano, just beautiful. And over here in the corner is the dining hall. And this is inside the dining hall. And this is where Clare sat, marked by the flowers. So the next place I want to show you is St. Clare's Basilica. So here's Piazza del Camune again, and here is just a short walk to St. Clare's Basilica. This is a picture of the Basilica. It's really quite extensive. And as you enter, what you see is this beautiful, beautiful area. Assisi has had a couple earthquakes, and so some of what had been beautifully painted on the walls was shaken off. But you can see this cross, which is so beautiful. And then here is the original cross. And Ken, I don't know if you can see it, but as you can see how this is actually kind of gold and raised. And then right down here, this is also raised, which is different from the replica, right? So there's different texturing, and you can see this looks a bit older. So from my standpoint, this is the original. And then as you go below the church, to the floor below is St. Clare's tomb. As you walk in, you see this visual, and then right here is the tomb. And on display, you can see some of her clothing and artifacts, which are down on the level of the tomb, not to be missed. The next place I'll show you is Santa Maria dell'Anjali and the Porzunkula. Here we are, Piazza del Camune. You have to come down. You have to come down the hill into the city of Santa Maria by the train station to find the Basilica of Santa Maria dell'Anjali. It's about a half-hour walk, not bad because you're going downhill. And then you can take the bus up. You can take the bus down too, by the way. There's a bus that frequently departs every half hour. You can get down there, it's very easy. This is a picture of the Basilica from the outside. Here it is from a little bit from the hill. It's kind of blown up. Inside, there is a statue of St. Francis in the part over here. It's not exactly in the Basilica itself, but I always found this one very interesting because this nest, you'd think that this was just a statue of birds and everything, but the fact is that these are real birds who choose to come there. So they're two real birds. They choose to nest there. It's just amazing to me. And I've seen it with the birds not there, and I've seen it with the birds there. And this is inside. I mean, the birds come in through some window or something. It's not like there's feed. They're just there. It's amazing. Oh, there it goes again. Okay. So as you enter the Basilica, what you see is it's beautiful, of course, and in the center is the Porzunkula, which was restored by hand by St. Francis. What you come to find out is that this Santa Maria dell'Anjali, this basilica, is actually, again, a superstructure to house this building. And this is such a special place because St. Francis had prayed in this, and he had a profound experience of forgiveness. And it was so profound that he prayed to Jesus and said that, this experience of forgiveness was so special, so amazing, so profound that he wanted everyone to have it. And he asked Jesus if he would allow that everyone who goes into this could have their sins forgiven. And, and Jesus agreed. and as the story goes, provided the Pope approved. And so the Pope would only allow that to happen on certain holy days for a long time. But in the 60s, the Pope said, hey, have at it. Anytime you go in there, that you can have that forgiveness. So that's how the story goes, that Francis asked for that permission from Jesus and Jesus gave it. And so
David, what has been your experience there?
profound. It is like one of my two most favorite places in Assisi, this and the tomb of St. Francis. And when you walk inside the Porzunkula, you see this. There are these old pews that are there for carols for one person to pray in. So you can sit inside this and or kneel inside this and pray. And it is not to be missed. And you can go at off hours. I mean, there are times when people show up because they do mass in there and they do this whole prayer thing every day at 5 o'clock in there. And it's beautiful because they're singing and they're doing the, you know, Ave Maria, Madre de Dio, prega per noi peccatori, you know, adesso all'ora della non morto. You know, they're saying, you know, Blessed Mary, Mother of God, pray for us, pray for our sins now and at the time of our death, amen. You know, they're saying it over and over again. It's just beautiful. It's like they're saying the rosary. It's just, and this is it's just beautiful. And then I have this little video. I didn't put it on because I was messing with the phone and turning it on the side, but they're singing here. I was in there and they're singing, and it was just, and they're singing outside this beautiful Brother, Sun, Sister, Moon tune, you know, and it's just, yeah, it was amazing.
That would have been beautiful to hear. You can't even imagine. It must have been beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. So this is a superstructure for the Porzunkula, and by the way, for this building, because this was St. Francis's hut that he stayed in and he died in. So this is the building, and it's inside the basilica, and you can see St. Francis's his cord from his robe, and this is where he died. You know, 3rd of October, 1226. Perhaps you can see this writing right here. So there we were in Santa Maria dell'Anjali, St. Clare's Basilica, San Damiano. Last stop, the Basilica of St. Francis. There it is. Just stunning. Here we are. So this is from the top. Now we're going to go down here, and you can see this is, if you're entering this is the Piazza del Piazza di San Francesco. They hold plays, they hold musicals here, there are concerts and stuff. The big Christmas tree comes in, it's right here. And this is the upper basilica right here. Here's the lower basilica, and below this, there, because there's 3 levels, there is the tomb, St. Francis's tomb. So let's start with the upper basilica. And what you see along the sides are these paintings by Giotto, famous Italian artist, of the different scenes from St. Francis's life. So the famous one with Francis preaching to the birds is right over here. And the one that I showed you where he received the stigmata is over here, just off of our view. And this is where they say the Mass. Here's the lower basilica. And this is where they say Mass here. And in each of these different coves, you have different statues and beautiful paintings, as you can see. This is behind the altar, just incredible paintings. More paintings and statues on display, St. Francis's robes. Oh, here's a video showing take a look around. Yeah. And one of my favorite paintings with Francis and Gabriel and Jesus and Mary. Crucifixion. Here's It's a picture of St. Clare I showed you and St. Francis on this end. And now we enter the tomb of St. Francis, and you walk in and there are places to sit and meditate and pray. And here is the tomb that was, and St. Francis's body was put in here in 1230. Since 1230, and these little things hanging off it are the Pope coming to inspect. These are medals that certify that the Pope inspected this, that it's authentic, that St. Francis's remains are here. And when the Mandli came and kissed the tomb, this is what they were doing.
David,
Yes.
am I remembering correctly that that was actually only excavated in the 1800s? That the lower level? Because originally he was buried, I guess.
Right. It was not. I don't remember. You're right. I was doing some research because I thought that it was the later time when St. Francis's body was put in there, and then it was not to be able to be found for a while, and then later on it was uncovered, and then I found out that the body was actually put there in 1230. So I think you're right, and I didn't take the next step. I just thought, well, that story must be wrong because the body was there in 1230, but I think that could be right.
David, what mandali are you speaking of that kissed the stone?
Well, it was the ones that went back to town, and Baba instructed them to go to the mass in the crypt at 7
Oh, when
a.m.
Baba was there. Oh.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh,
So
okay.
I think Quentin was back at so it was Chanji and well, we can go back and look at the story. Give me a
Well, that's
second.
okay. I just didn't know if it was recent mandali or the ones that were with Baba. So it was with Baba. Baba had them go there. Oh my
That's right.
God.
That's right.
Would you say the mandali again? That Baba sent to there.
Must be a real important question because of all the echo. I'm sorry, what was the question? Okay, maybe someone can help me
So,
out.
I have two tools going on because I can hear you better through can you hear me, David?
Yes.
It's Carol. Sorry, it's just I have to use my smartphone for the audio because my computer audio is not working very well for a while. Which mandali again would you just say that were with Baba that he had go to that service and kiss the stone? Do you know offhand?
Well, we can go back and just look at
Can we go back for a moment? Yeah, please.
Yeah, one would have to be Herbert Davy.
Yeah.
I think it was Herbert and Chanji, was it? Let's take a look.
I don't know. Let's take a look instead of guessing.
Quentin was there, Herbert and Quentin.
Well, but two stayed with Baba and the others
Oh.
were
Right,
told by Baba to go into town.
right here. Wait a second. It's got to be.
Thank you. Thank you, David.
Oh, wait. I think I read it and then I showed you guys, right? Yeah, here we go.
This is while I'm still on audio, this is a wonderful presentation. You've done work on this since the last time I heard you talk about being there. Thank you so much for all the work you've put into this.
You bet. So it was, okay, Kaka and Quentin to return to town and go. So, okay. So Baba had ordered Kaka and Quentin to return to town and go to the Catholic Mass in the crypt of the Basilica at 7 a.m.
7 a.m. and kiss the tomb. Now to see the tomb is wonderful. I mean, has an impact for me.
The tomb is something special. The tomb of the perfect masters are always special.
David, I have a question. I didn't understand what Ken was saying, or the issue about the excavation of Francis's tomb.
Yeah, there was something about Francis's body not being okay. So here's the thing: the Catholics are really into relics, right? Which means body parts, essentially, of the saints. And if you go to, for example, if you go to Laverna, there's this big church there, and there's a little room off to the side, and I call it the Chapel of the Body Parts, because there are basically all of these different things of different parts of saints lining the walls. And it's like, okay. And so when Francis was dying, he wanted to see Claire one last time. And so they carried him from the Porzunkula, from the room where he was by the Porzunkula, where let's get a map here. Just a second. So they carried him from down here over to San Damiano. And by the way, there's, and so they carried him over here, but they were so afraid of him dying and then people trying to take parts of his body that they had an army, a contingent, a platoon, not a full army, but a platoon of people that were there to protect his body, because he wanted to see St. Clare and to wave goodbye to her, which he did. And as they were taking him back, as they were walking down here, he looked back up at Assisi, and he said, and there's a place commemorating this. There's a whole building with a plaque on it, and there's a whole story commemorating that he looked back on the city and said that many people would have a profound spiritual experience in Assisi. He blessed the town for ages to come, and that that many people would come to, have a profound spiritual experience when they went to Assisi. And that was his blessing, his benediction for Assisi in the part of his passing. It's actually pretty cool. It's just on the side of the road, right? It's not a, it's not like it's well visited or anything like that. It's a place you drive by on your way up the hill if you know the back roads to get into Assisi, and it's right there, and you just park and can see it. And so there was this protection about St. Francis's body. And so when I had originally done the research, I had thought, well, okay, so it had been recently discovered later on, like in the 1800s, as Ken was saying. And I thought, oh, well, I wonder where they put the body and when it was actually installed in the basilica. And then I did the research and found out that it was actually put in the basilica in 1230. So it must have been hidden there for a long time. And I think that's what it is. I'm going to do more research on this and find out, but that's all I can tell you for today.
Yeah, as I understand it, so he would have been buried there, the middle level chapel built first, and the Grand Basilica built above that. And then in the 1800s, they excavated and created the lower level where you're actually walking around his casket, which had been underground.
I think that makes a lot of sense to me. Or did you just do the research? Thank you.
I thought I read that when I visited there in a booklet or something, but it's years ago.
I'm not a real reader when I go there, so I totally get it, and I appreciate that. Thank you. I will have to look that up. So there's a sunset from Assisi. And so I just wanted to take this and share the New Life prayer. This new life is endless, and even after my physical death, it will be kept alive by those who live the life of complete renunciation of falsehood, lies, hatred, anger, greed, and lust, and who, to accomplish all this, do no lustful actions, do no harm to anyone, do no backbiting, do not seek material possessions or power, who accept no homage, who neither covet honor nor shun disgrace, and fear no one and nothing. By those who rely wholly and solely upon God, and who love God purely for the sake of loving, who believe in the lovers of God and in the reality of manifestation, and yet do not expect to receive any spiritual or material reward, who do not let go of the hand of truth, and who, without being upset by calamities, bravely and wholeheartedly face all hardships with 100% cheerfulness, and give no importance to caste, creed, and religious ceremonies. This new life will live eternally, even if there is no one to live it. By Meher Baba.
David,
In my
David,
opinion, I
I
think
have-
Francis lived it. Sorry, go
Dave-
ahead.
David, I wanted to share this because we did a celebration of Meru's life, Manjali Meru. And they says, you were one of the few women that went on the new life. What do you have to say about it? She says, I'm glad it was over. I guess it wasn't easy.
No.
Yeah.
And if you look at 12 ways of realizing me, number 12, love. If you have that love for me that St. Francis had for Jesus, then not only will you realize me, but you will also please me. Such was St. Francis.
And did you mention that he wasn't named St. Francis at birth?
No, he wasn't. I did not.
Yeah.
That's true.
And that name Francis means free.
It could be. I think it means. I think it was that they were saying he was French, and that his because his mom was French, and but it could be that it means free, and so it certainly could be. But you're right. I think his birth name was Giovanni.
I was just reading this morning that that was for, is it John the Baptist? His mother had a more spiritual name for him, which was Giovanni. But anyway, yeah.
Right. Yes. And again, here's another sunset in Assisi. So there we are. Any questions?
David, I have a question about St. Bernardine's cross that you're so touched by. Who was St. Bernardine, and why does that cross touch you so much?
I don't know who St. Bernardine was, and he came after St. Francis. Because right, I was conflating Bernardine and Benedictine, and so Saint Benedict actually had a variety of different monasteries and churches set up in Italy prior to Saint Francis, and the Franciscans actually relied on the Benedictines for support at times. The Benedictines took the Franciscans in. Before the order, the Benedictines were actually helping the Francis and his early disciples. And in fact, you saw the early portrait of St. Francis that was in a Benedictine retreat place. It's a bit south of Rome, so it's a bit far. It's a beautiful setting, by the way. But so in terms of Bernardine, I think St. Bernardine came later, and I don't know a lot about his life, I'm sorry, but all I can say is the experience of seeing that cross it struck me, and I had always longed to go back and find it, and I didn't remember whether it was in the Eremo or it was in San Damiano, and I searched for it because you can't get in to see it on a regular basis, and so I found it one day in the Eremo, and I took some pictures of it because it's in the room that's a cafeteria where they ate, and you just can't get, it's not open all the time. So I got lucky.
That cross was part of the Benedictines, the order of the Benedictines.
Bernardine and Benedictine are two different ones.
Oh, they're two different. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's why I was confused by it. I was confused, but I didn't know the distinction right away, and because the Benedictines were actually before Francis, and the Bernardine is after.
Curious. Maybe you had a past life connection with that.
I don't know, but it was important to me, and I got a picture of it.
Thank you.
Yeah, got lucky.
David, great presentation. Thank you. I had one question. At the entrance of Eremo, there is a universal religious, symbols embossed on that halo-like structure, right on the back of Saint Francis's, statue. I was just wondering if you think that might have been there when Baba visited, that place, or how it came about later on, that universal, the universal religious, how it all came together.
Symbols.
Yeah, right. I do not know whether that was there when Baba was, you can see here they are again. I do not know if those were there when Baba was there. I don't know when these statues were made, but yeah, that's a great question.
Ruthie has a hand up. Ruth?
Here we go. Sorry. Yeah, what about St. Anthony? I had heard somewhere that St. Anthony, I think it's a Padua. Am I getting it right?
Padua?
Thank you, Padua. Yeah, that actually he and St. Francis had met at one occasion. I know that St. Anthony came a little bit, I think he was a little bit later. I think he was a Franciscan as well. Do you know about this?
And St. Anthony is the one that's often depicted in the churches holding the baby Jesus. And you wonder, why is this not St. Francis? And in fact, St. Francis is not often seen in Catholic churches far afield of Italy, or of Assisi. Most of them depict St. Anthony. I don't know. I just don't know. I'm not Catholic anymore, and I just don't know the Catholic saint lore.
Yeah, well, I had heard that he was a missionary, St. Anthony was, and that he longed to see St. Francis, who was like the father of his order, and at some point they did have that occasion. So I always thought that was kind of cool, if that was his desire to see him.
Very cool. And also talking about the connections of St. Francis to other saints, St. Elizabeth, who was in Germany. For those of you who know about St. Elizabeth, she was in the Thuringia version, part of Germany. It's in the middle. She actually had her conversion. She was royalty in this duchy of Germany. She'd been married to the head of this little province, the ruler of this little province in the Thuringia, and it was by hearing the disciples of St. Francis preach about Jesus and the Franciscan life that she was so inspired to lead the life that led to her being St. Elizabeth. There were miracles associated with her. But that's another connection to St. Francis for another saint.
David, this is also very interesting when the present Pope, Pope Francis, took the name Francis. He was a Jesuit. This Pope was a Jesuit. He was of the Jesuit order. And so they said, oh, you're choosing Francis because of Francis Xavier, who's buried off of Goa. And he says, no, I'm choosing Francis because of Francis of Assisi. So it was like, and also he had a simple cross. I remember, I wouldn't say I'm an ex-Catholic. I mean, certainly don't go to the Catholic Church, but it was simple. I think he had a wooden cross when he came out to say, except being Pope. And to me, it's just such an indication that he will be the last Pope. That's my prediction on it. If I have any predictive, it's interesting. The other Pope stepped down, he couldn't handle it. And then one comes in and he's named after St. Francis of Assisi. The humility of it. I mean, really. Yeah.
Rosalie, you might enjoy that movie, The Two Popes.
I've seen it. I've seen
Okay.
that. Yeah, yeah. No, it was good, and yeah, and it's sort of like it's interesting. Even Baba coming, you know, he's refreshing the old of all these religions. This is an important advent. This is not a usual. It's always important when Avatar comes, but this is the end of a cycle of cycles. And I remember Joseph Harb, who was pretty in the know. You know, he says 7-11. It's a 7th cycle of 11 cycles, and it's not an ordinary thing. And I don't think we've seen a fraction of what's going to happen. I mean, this is mega. This is going to be mega. And, you know, and you read a little bit about, they kind of talked about this meeting and what would follow, when it would follow, though we don't know. But, you know, our present time is pretty well confusion and chaos, worldwide confusion and chaos, and how Baba's going to transform that. And actually, Baba said he would. America was too materialistic. He would transform that into spiritual and creative channels. And he even allowed Mara to have her head broken open, and he wouldn't even allow anyone to disagree with her. So that's incredible work happening there, you know. So look out, United States.
We've got a couple of people who haven't spoken yet. I'm going to call on them. Prakash, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm Jai Baba, David. Beautiful presentation, honestly. And the question I have is, in 2018, when you all went, how many days did you spend out there to round up all the places that you mentioned in this presentation?
Oh, well, you know, in 2018, there was an Italian Sahavas, and if you know Valeria, it was at her villa in a town called San Gemini, which is a beautiful property. Her family has owned that property for, you know, maybe a century or so. They were a very prominent family in that city. And so we spent most of the time, most of the week at that property. The Sahavas was for a week, and we spent most of it at the property. Then one day of the week, we went to Assisi. The cars were rented. We drove to Assisi, and the group spent just a day there. I personally, after the Sahavas, spent 10 days in Assisi, and that was my second time in Assisi. And I decided after that, because I loved it so much, I decided to spend the summer of 2019 in Assisi. So I rented a place and spent the summer there.
And one last question. This place where you all stayed with Valeria, I think that's her name.
Yeah.
Is that still available if we go, or is there any such Sahavas going to be held in the near future?
You know,
I mean, somebody like you would really help guide people really well. So I was thinking.
Well, thank you for that, from your mouth to Baba's ears. And, you know, I don't know about the plans for any future Sahavases, and you might want to contact Emily Myers about that.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Dinku, you've not spoken up. Do you have a question?
Yeah, David, thank you so much. It was so fascinating. Your presentation was just great. And I'd like to know, what is St. Francis's connection? Why is he known as the patron saint of animals?
So first of all, I think I just want to restate that, you know, I think from Baba's 12 ways of realizing me, he was very clear that St. Francis was a Sadguru, and certainly that experience of St. Francis had when he received the stigmata, recognizing that he was going to be made like Christ in mind and heart. I think that's an important thing. Now, his connection with animals is that there are a number of situations from Francis's life. I did not focus on those, but there was a wolf that terrorized, what was the town?
I've got it.
G, it starts with a G, yeah, and I've been there, and it's a very beautiful town. Gubbio.
Gubbio.
And so it was terrorizing the town, and no one could stop the wolf, but Francis went and talked to the wolf and told the wolf that, and I'm sure, I think Betty's going to tell the story in a little more detail, but Francis talked to the wolf, and he quit eating the people.
Well,
and then
the townspeople promised to feed him, to continue to feed the wolf.
that's right. They had to promise to feed him. Kind of reminds me of that story Bauji used to tell about the cobra attacking the town, and then the perfect master going out and talking to the snake. But what else? Focusing on St. Francis, and then there was a time when St. Francis preached to the birds, which is depicted in the Basilica. So I think those are at least two of the stories and Francis loved animals, and they loved him. So everywhere he went, the animals were attracted. So I think that's the connection. And Betty, will probably tell you more about that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Well, if you can talk to a
I'm not sure
wolf,
if there are. Donna and Ken, did you have more? Or
Yeah,
if
just
you
quick,
can talk
three
with
quick
a wolf,
things.
you have something go.
Number one, on the animals, of course, Francis was the first one apparently to do the Christmas creche, the stable with the animals.
Yes, the nativity. Francis was the first one to do a
Oh.
nativity scene. And one of the very cool things that you'll see if you go there at Christmas time is that there are in the Santa Maria dell'Angeli, there are nativity scenes from all over the world. It's
Wow.
beautiful. It's
And,
beautiful.
How interesting.
and then on the with other saints, if you look up Francis and Dominic, they met in Rome apparently, and before they both started their orders, or when they were starting their orders. But on that statue of Francis with the symbols, I don't remember seeing that. But if I was to take a wild guess, I would say that was after the 1986 meeting where the Pope had the Dalai Lama and the Eastern Orthodox Church and all religions were gathered in Assisi. And they had a meeting, and that tradition has continued over the years. So perhaps that statue was in remembrance or related to that with different religious symbols.
It certainly could be. And Ken, just to your point, to add to this whole thing about when were these statues made, if you'll notice, it looks like the same. So there's a number of statues around Eremo. There's one with Francis on his back, like this, looking up, and one of his disciples there. And if you look at that statue at Rivator, it seems like it's from the same artist. And so it could be that that's when they were there. My first visit to Assisi was in 2015, so I have no history.
Also, Pope John the 23rd, as I remember, had the ecumenical council. So it was many religions too. That was, he promoted listening. He was more expansive than not so closed off Catholic Church. So that was quite a while ago, as I remember it. Yeah.
Yes.
Betty, I've had my hand up for a while. I'd like to say, David,
Yeah.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I went to Assisi. The only time I've been was in 1974, and I didn't come to Baba until 1977. And today, your story of when Francis was being carried back after saying goodbye to Claire, that on the road back to Assisi, that what did you say again? Because when I was there in 74, the feeling of, I thought this isn't, I didn't use the word spiritual in those days. It was just not in my vocabulary or consciousness. I mean, I'd heard the word, but it just struck me as so rarefied and so beautiful. And I thought, this place is special. And I wouldn't have used the word sacred either, but that's what I would say to it now. And I was so taken by being in Assisi, it blew me away. And so your story today is, I mean, they wouldn't know exactly where that spot on the road is where he stopped and said something, would he? I mean, there wouldn't be, probably is a paved road now, and then it was a dirt road or a little, just a little, you know, whatever, little, almost nothing road. Can you say anything more that you know about that? That he blessed it, that in the future, I just, if you could say what you said again, it just so deeply touched me when I heard that.
So here's a picture of that building. It's a little building, and you can see, here's a picture of this plaque of Francis on his deathbed stretcher, and he's looking back up and blessing the town of Assisi. And then here's this little plaque commemorating, it's in Italian, and I didn't transfer, it would take me time to translate it, but that's it. He was looking back up at the town and blessing it and giving a blessing to that, you know, many people will come to Assisi from all over, and they will have a profound spiritual experience there. And he was blessing that would happen.
Well, that's amazing, because I did, on the level that I was open to it at that time. Thank you. That deeply touched, many things touched me, and that was one of them today.
And this is on a fairly, well, you know, this is a paved road, and it's something that if you're in a car and you're zipping from the grocery store down in Santa Maria and going back up to Assisi, you'll drive by this, because you're not going to use the main tourist road that the buses take, because it's going to be too long. You're going to go the back way, and you'll drive right by this.
Oh, great. I'd like to stop there, even though they may just have made it up that was the place. Who knows where it was exactly.
No, that building looks kind of old, doesn't it? It doesn't look like it's, you know, brand spanking new. I mean, this building is hundreds of years old.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You bet.
Diana, Terry, you had your hand up.
I just have a quick question. First of all, thank you so much. We plan to be, it's part of our first trip to go in 2022. And did you say why he died or how he died? Because it was so young.
Sickness.
And then, sorry, and then this is a Jew asking this question. How did he become a saint?
So, he had so many illnesses that he was practically blind. He had cataracts, he had the stigmata, he had been ill. He suffered a lot physically with his health, all during his ministry, a lot of physical problems. And in terms of, and there were miracles associated with St. Francis, right? And his service and stuff. And so that is what the Catholics have, certain criteria that they use to declare someone a saint. It's going to be the performance of, you know, documented miracles. And of course, the Pope at the time, Gregory, was a real fan of St. Francis and all that he had done. And so Gregory canonizing St. Francis 2 years after his death was, in a way, so the Pope is the one that confers that on people. And again, there's criteria about performing miracles or having miracles attributed to that person, and that's the criteria. And they did it in 1228. They made.
But Mother Teresa was on the fast track. They're doing it faster. It was very fast for Mother Teresa.
Quite frankly, 2 years back in those days,
yeah,
incredibly fast.
It's like 200 years. Yeah.
Yeah, we usually wait hundreds of years. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yes, I have one other question. So again, a Jew asking the question, stigmata is the, like the wounds, right?
The wounds, yeah.
So who gave him the wounds?
It was during his prayer. So God had given him the stigmata.
Ah,
So that seraph, that was the vision. If you recall that slide, that painting where this seraph, this angel, but it wasn't exactly the traditional angel. It was this man, 6 wings, 2 above, 2 covering the body, and 2 below. And it was that from that vision that he received the stigmata while he was deep in prayer and along with Brother Leo being in attendance. Brother Leo was attending him while he was, off to the side while Francis was doing this intense prayer in September, right around September 14th, 2024. That's when that happened. And he was on a 40-day fast in preparation for the Feast of the Archangels, which was on September 29th.
thank you very much.
Yeah.
Wasn't that the actually Kizzer giving him God realization at that time? I think Baba said that.
Right, that's right. And from that account, I thought, which was so beautiful, was kind of confirming that. And that was from one of St. Francis's biographies. It might have been from the notes of Brother Leo. And so I thought that there were enough clues in there for us Baba lovers to say that was when he got God realization.
I found a couple of paragraphs. I wanted to talk about this. Could I just read? It's in Lord Mayhair. Do you mind if I just?
Sure, go for it.
So Baba turned to Ivy Deuce and asked, "Have you heard of the ancient Sufi prophet Khwaja Khizr?" And she replied she had heard Rabbi Martin speak of him. And Baba said, "Khwaja Khizr now and then takes on a physical body, if there is some spiritual situation that demands it. The realization of Francis was such a case because he had no perfect master to give him realization. So on the night we read about on Mount La Verna near Assisi, during which Saint Francis also received the stigmata, wounds of the crucified Christ, Khwaja Khizr in his temporary human form gave his beloved Western saint the touch of grace which made him a perfect soul, a Sadguru or perfect master." But then there's this. This is St. Francis of Assisi. This is another section. "The greatest renouncer began his unique endeavors at the impulse of a moment, but he stuck to his enthusiasm very closely when, after 4 years of immense suffering, he came in contact with a European wali who created him in divine love with a glance of his grace, as is the case with such spiritually advanced personalities as walis, who at times on the impulse of the moment implant the spark of love in whoever they please, after remaining for 3 more years in the love-stricken state. St. Francis came to India in search of God, where he finally came in contact with a Hindu master who gave him God realization. After the complete divine upliftment, St. Francis returned to his native place, where he eventually had hundreds of thousands of followers." So I was wondering, like, first he became a perfect master, did he, and then go to India, or is it kind of a contradiction? I don't know.
So where is that second quote from?
Both of them from Lord Mayhair.
Yeah, what are the pages, Betty?
Page 860.
860 is the first one, and what's the second one?
No, the second one is page 860. I would have to go back and find the first one about. I can't. I'll do it now.
Yeah.
So, did he go to India? Is this talked about, or in your? Did you find anything like that?
No, I don't remember. I think he went far afield when he went to visit the Sultan in Egypt, but he came back from that after a month or so. I don't recall any time when he from my reading,
Uh-huh.
where he went far afield like that, because he didn't get out of Italy when he was going to do the crusade, right? He was going to go on that crusade, but he had that vision at Spoleto and just returned to Assisi. I know yeah, so that's, boy, I don't recall anything like that in the biographies I have read.
Okay. Well, it does seem that the Khizr, the who came, that seems pretty verified and generally understood. And who gave him the stigmata? He prayed, and because he didn't have a master, he was uplifted or to perfect master anyway. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. I'll.
Betty, thank you for digging that up. That is fascinating. Thank you.
Yeah.
David, I remember Erich talking about the Khizr, Baba, Erich saying in Mandalay Hall, and I was there, so I heard it directly from Erich, that Khizr had given St. Francis God realization, because there was no spiritual master to do that in his area at that time that could do that. So do you remember, you probably heard Erich talk about that or have read that material in that version of the story, which I believe from Erich, because he said he never repeated anything that Baba hadn't said. Do you know what year that was from your information, and how many more years he lived as being God realized?
Well, if when St. Francis received the stigmata was when he got God realization, I believe that to be the case. And I did not hear Erich. I was not fortunate enough to hear that straight from Erich. Then he got the stigmata around the 14th of right in September of 1224, and St. Francis passed away in October of 1226. So he had it for two years. He was realized for 2 years.
For 2 years, yeah. That I didn't remember, but that was about what I remember. Thank you. I'm not arguing. I just want to, put some markers on things that I've already heard.
Yeah, yeah, me neither. I'm just, the few things I know I'm sharing.
I read from also that the Baba's two favorite women saints were Teresa of Avila and Catherine of Siena, and his two favorite men were Francis and Augustine, Saint Augustine. Well, this has really been, it's been wonderful, David. Oh, I see Mayor Prasad. We have another whole hour, so we're okay. I don't know about you.
I'm going to need to get off soon. Mayor Prasad, do you have a question?
Yeah, Jai Baba David, it's a wonderful presentation. The cave number 15 you're talking about, is that easily discoverable somewhere in Meher Baba Travels or something? Because we couldn't locate it when we went there. So for people who want to go in the future, I wonder if the information you have is easily locatable, or if you have plans to do that.
I am certainly happy to do that, but I think there is a book that Carolyn Ball has written, and I would, let's see, here we are, going back here, this book.
Oh.
And I suspect Carolyn has done a great job at documenting where that cave is. And the picture of the map that I showed you, that is near the public restroom at Aramo. It's just off the side. It was hard to find. And but number 15 is the cave. And if you take that picture of the map, I think you'd be able to find it, because if you follow if you get on the right path there, and it's really, the conclusion is Baba's cave if you get on the right path. and because there's not a whole lot of deviations from it, you just have to go all the way to the end. But this book, I'm sure, documents it, would be my guess.
Okay, yeah. I think it might make sense to put this on the website somewhere where people can find it. Maybe I'll talk to you offline to see how that can be done.
Yeah, no worries.
You could also talk directly with Carolyn Ball if you have the Mayor Baba community phone number. You could call her directly if you wanted to. And but I believe, as David has just said, she did put that in that book, a very clear map. She has a presentation. I must be up on YouTube. I would hope that it would be. It was filmed by someone here in Myrtle Beach when she gave the talk at the Circle Center. And I can't imagine that Carolyn would mind my giving her phone number if you'd like to take it down right now. It's area code 843, which is the same area code as the center is. Her phone number is 843-272-4114.
Thank you.
Because her whole intention, as was David, is to make, it more, this cave and Baba being in Assisi much more as available as possible to other Baba lovers.
Right.
David, I wondered, is that cave that Baba was in, is that kind of known to any as a special place? Is it known to people outside the Baba world? Is the Catholic Church recognize it as a unique site or not?
Well, so I don't know. But what I will tell you is that the Catholics let those pictures be there. You'd think that they would be cleaning them out as sacrilege or something, but they let them be there, and Baba lovers make the pilgrimage to that cave. And by the way, do not get deterred if you're there and there are blockages, seeming blocks on the path. I have to tell you, there have been a number of times when the trail has been taped off, or I guess I shouldn't be saying this on tape, but I'm just saying, don't be deterred. If there's a tape there or something like that, just I wouldn't let it stop me. I didn't let it stop me. Oops, did I say that? Anyway, yeah.
Oops. We have Donna. Oh, let's see, Ruthie, you had a hand up.
I just wanted to say two quick things. I know this isn't within the realm of reality, but there was a beautiful book written about St. Francis by Kazantzakis. And I bring it up because it was so heartfelt that just reading it made me want to weep. It was so beautifully close to what I think Baba would have loved to hear. It was a very wonderful book. And then the other thing was years ago, right after I'd heard about Baba, I had a big St. Francis dream. And I'll just
Eddie. Hey, Betty, you here? Betty,
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know what happened here. Let me
is it about done?
it's about done, but it's not completely done. I don't.
Is it really that long?
I
It's been
I
on
think
for 2 hours.
it's almost. It's possible that was the end, but let me.
Betty, you
What?
just have, you're on the wrong video. You're on
I
7.
know. I realize I have to get back to the next one.
Go back out and go to your file list and
Here,
get the other one.
stop sharing here. Let me stop sharing for a minute, and I will get back to Shed Irani. Here,
David lived
whoa.
in Assisi during the
Okay,
summer of
sorry. I'm gonna go all the way to it. Okay, I may replace some of this here. Play. No. Sorry. Stop.
Shed
Okay.
Irani. David lived in
Sorry, folks. Let me. I'm gonna.
So it has to be right there, Betty, because you were just playing.
You know, I think we're done.
Did it cut off in the middle of Ruthie's talking?
It may have.
Because Ruthie's going to talk about her dream.
Yes.
Oh yeah, you got a good dream coming up. St. Francis dream.
Let me start.
Actually, I think there were about 20 more minutes to go. So
Really?
I think that,
Okay.
yeah, because I looked at the clock and it what you said.
I know I'm not being able to do this.
Probably have to go back to the previous video, Betty. Is my guess.
Take your time. Take your time, Betty. We'll wait.
Huh. Let's see. It seems to just be balking at Ruthie.
The Feast of the Archangels, which was on September 29th.
Okay. This has really been.
Right.
I'll share this if you. Let's see. I'm not.
David,
What is Dave's last name? The guy who's speaking.
Raffo. It's odd. There's like a. It's just not letting me. It's stopped right at Ruthie. Huh. Her face.
You're there, and
her face is just frozen there, and I'm not able to get it to where she's talking. And if I hit the no. Huh. Let's see. No. Oh, sorry.
Shed Irani.
Well,
David lived.
This may be all we're gonna get. Oh.
Would mind my giving her phone number if you'd like to take it down?
I got just as far as David, and then
there.
no.
You'd think that they would be cleaning them out
Sorry, folks.
as sacrilege or something.
I think we're just gonna have to accept that, folks. As where are we here? So, you know, it's the end. I'm not able to play this any.
Well, you can ask Ruthie if you have her at Archie. Yeah.
Listen,
Why not?
there's one thing I want to communicate. David really wanted to be here because he's done more research, and he has answers to some of those questions that we were asking about, and he says next time you do this, we didn't contact him far enough in advance. I guess he said next time you do this, I'd like to present it in person because I've done a lot more research.
Great.
So yeah,
it was freaking for me to see my face making a comment because I didn't quite make it on, and then I went, "Oh my God, I'm talking!" It was really freaky.
I know it's a little confusing. Let's see.
Yeah.
and I'm afraid our video stopped. Kind of, I don't know what. You know, it stopped abruptly when I couldn't get Ruthie right. But I think I can't do any better than it's for some reason. Maybe the video kind of corrupted it. It's frozen right at Ruthie's face.
Yeah.
I wouldn't let it stop me. I didn't let it stop me. Oops, did I say that? Anyway, yeah.
You're still on record, Betty.
Pardon? Oh, sorry.
Ruthie, you had a hand.
Oh, okay. I
just wanted to say two quick things. I know this isn't within the realm of reality, but there was a beautiful book written about St. Francis by Kazantzakis. And I bring it up because it was so heartfelt that just reading it made me want to weep. It was so beautifully close to what I think Baba would have loved to hear. It was a very wonderful book.
That's the one that Kitty Davy.
Right after I'd heard about Baba, I had a big St. Francis jewelry.